Okay. Ready for Lane?
Am I recording?
Yeah.
Land valuation. Tax appraisers deal with land valuation both when valuing vacant, no improvements land, when valuing improved property, because Property Tax Code Section 25.02 requires the appraisal records to indicate separate values for land and for improvements. Appraisers and other disciplines need to value land separately for the cost approach. 6 generally accepted methods. The sales comparison market method compares subject property to recently sold comparable vacant parcels. Allocation determines typical proportion of value contributed by land and improvement. Applies this ratio to a total value to determine land value. Ooh, your feet are cold. Example, stop it. A home sold for $180,000. Land typically contributes 20% in the subdivision where the home is located. What would be the land value in the sale? $180,000 times 20% equals $36,000. So the land value here is $36,000. So example, the typical land to property ratio in the Creek Wall Acres subdivision is 1:5. A home in the subdivision recently sold for $200,000. What would the land value be? Ratio 1:5 means the land is one of 5 parts. Each part is worth $40,000. So $200,000 divided by 5 is equal to $40,000. So land is 1 part, therefore land value is $40,000. Abstraction. Use cost approach to determine depreciated value of improvements of a sold improved property. Subtract depreciated value of the improvements to get the value of the land. Example, a home recently sold for $175,000. The appraiser calculated the value of the improvements by the cost approach to be $148,000. What would the land value be? Total value minus the RCNLD equals land. So $175,000 less the $148,000 equals $27,000. So the land value then is the $27,000. Anticipated use. Used primarily to value land in transition from raw land to a developed site. This method is based on the cost of developing the land and estimated sales prices after development. To apply this method, total the cost of development and subtract from the total estimated sales prices. The remaining value is the contributory value of the raw land. This method is typically used when useful sales data are not available. Capitalization of ground rent. This method uses the income approach and must have land-only income information available. The net income of the land is capitalized into a value. Land residual capitalization. This method is used for income-producing properties where an improvement value can be developed. The operating income attributable to the improvement is deducted from the total income, leaving the income attributable to the land, which is isolated and capitalized.
Okay, here we go.
Course 102, Section 4, the approaches to value. Learning objectives. At the conclusion of this section, students should be able to name the 3 approaches to value, list and briefly describe each of the steps in the cost approach, list and briefly describe each of the steps in the sales comparison approach, list and briefly describe each of the steps of in the income approach, list the methods by which the land is appraised. A. Cost approach. Number 1, the cost approach estimates value by calculating what it would cost to develop a new property with the characteristics of property being appraised, and then adjusting the cost to reflect the actual condition and circumstances of the subject. Number 2, the basic formula of the cost approach. Improvement of value plus land value equals total value, where the improvement value equals the replacement cost new less the depreciation. Replacement cost new is RCN, depreciation is RCNLD. The cost approach is the basis for most Texas mass appraisal systems. Calculations are simple and readily explained. Differences in value are directly related to differences in property characteristics. This approach can be applied to virtually any type of property and results in uniform treatment of properties because the same basic formula is used for each. Steps in the cost approach. The cost approach begins with a careful inspection of the subject property. Tax appraisers usually complete a property record form during the inspection. Many different property elements are measured, recorded, and rated for quality, workmanship, and special characteristics. Once the inspection is complete, there are 6 steps in the cost approach. Number 1, estimate the value of the land. Number 2, estimate the cost new of the improvements. Number 3, estimate the value in any auxiliary structures or improvements. Number 4, estimate depreciation. Number 5, subtract depreciation from cost new. And number 6, add the value of the land to the result. These are described as below. The first step is to estimate the value of the land. Number 1, as if it was vacant. Number 2, it was as available to be put to its highest and best use. And methods of developing land value are discussed at the end of this section. The second step to estimate the cost new of the improvements. The second step is to estimate the cost new of the improvements. Cost new is the cost to construct a new building with the characteristics of the subject building. There are 4 types of cost new and 4 methods of calculating it. Number 1, types of cost new. Replacement cost, the cost of a structure with equal utility but current design and workmanship. This is the most commonly used type of cost. Reproduction cost, the cost of constructing an exact replica. Historical cost, the actual cost of the structure at the time it was built. Trended historical cost, actual cost expressed in current dollars, see below. Number 2, methods of estimating cost new. Comparative unit, called square foot method. The appraiser measures and classifies the improvement and then applies a table of typical construction costs per square foot to develop the cost. Quantity survey. In fee appraisal and in appraisal of very complex properties, the appraiser may do more detailed cost estimates. This process is very time-consuming, thus is rarely used in mass appraisal. Trended historical cost is developed by adjusting the historical cost of the structure to reflect current construction costs. Unit in place. The appraiser breaks up the subject into its components and applies a schedule of costs to each major component. The component costs are then totaled. Stop it. The third step is to estimate the value of any auxiliary structures or improvements. If the property has other structures besides the primary structure, for example, a detached garage or a swimming pool, the appraiser will estimate the value that it adds to the property. The fourth step is to estimate depreciation. Depreciation is a loss in value from all causes except depletion. It is the difference between the value of a structure in as-new condition and as-is condition. There are 3 types of depreciation: physical, functional, or economic. It is further classified as curable or incurable. Physical is wear and tear, natural deterioration, physical damage. Curable, it would make economic sense to repair or cure the damage, bringing the structure up to as-new condition. Incurable, the cost of curing of the damage would be prohibitive. Functional, value lost due to poor or outdated design or layout, called functional obsolescence. Curable, it would make economic sense to repair or cure the design or layout, bringing the structure up to current standards. Incurable, the cost of curing the problems would be prohibitive. Economic, value lost due to factors external to the property such as proximity to a landfill or location in an airport approach area, called economic or external obsolescence. Economic obsolescence is always considered to be incurable. Methods of estimating depreciation. Depreciation can be estimated by comparing sales prices of new and used properties of similar condition and utility. estimating the remaining useful life of the property and reducing the cost proportionately. For example, if an item lasts 40 years and it is 10 years old, it is 25% depreciated. This method is known as economic age life and allocates a uniform percentage of value loss each year. Where a condition can be cured, estimating the cost of repairing or curing the defect. There are various other methods. A combination of the three above is the most common in tax appraisal. Step 5 is subtracting depreciation from the replacement cost new of the main improvements, accessory improvements, and site improvements. Number 1, depreciation applies only to the improvements, not to the land. If depreciation is greater than replacement cost new, value of the structure is 0. An abbreviated RCNLD for replacement cost new less depreciation. The sixth and final step is adding the site or land value developed in first step to the depreciated cost of the improvements. Strengths and weaknesses of the cost approach. A. Strengths. Values land and improvements separately. Sorry, I didn't read that right. It can be used to produce a value estimate for any type of property. It's easily adjusted for condition and or obsolescence. It's easily adapted to computerized mass appraisal. Weaknesses are that it requires either market or income approach to value land, and sales or income data is needed to properly estimate the effect of the depreciation. And we're not doing the activities.